Good evening and welcome. We're here tonight to celebrate Christine's son, Kim. My name is Aska Hisa, Director of Learning and Engagement at ICALA, and here we have enjoyed the work of Christine's son, Kim, with our mural outside, which I hope you've seen coming in, titled Bounce Back, which has been on view since mid-February, and we love it so much that we're extending it for viewing until January 14th, 2024. We're thrilled about tonight's partnership with Art in the 21st Century, aka Art21, to present a sneak peek of their latest episode titled Friends and Strangers. It will be premiering on PBS later this year. Friends and Strangers celebrates artists, including Christine's son Kim, whose work facilitates collective responses to hardship, builds and sustains communities, and works to bring us together closer to one another. Christine's son Kim's practice considers how sound operates in society, deconstructing the politics of sound and exploring how oral languages operate as social currency. Musical notation, written language, infographics, American Sign Language, use of the body, and strategically deployed humor are all recurring elements in her practice. Working across drawing, performance, video, and large-scale murals, she explores her relationship to spoken languages, to her built and social environments, and to the world at large. At ICALA, we are broadening accessibility. We have been incorporating ASL into our public program video archives, as well as integrating ASL interpretation to our short video tours with curators, so that anyone can access these quick overview tours by scanning the QR code at the front desk. We have just completed our first series of Intro to ASL classes on site with the excellent teacher, Sami Khorsandi, and in partnership with GLAD, Greater Los Angeles Agency on Deafness. These classes were so popular that we will be adding a second series of Intro to ASL classes with Sami again, starting in October. I would like to thank Ajamu Brown and Benny Barber from Pro Bono ASL, who will be interpreting in ASL and English this evening and helping with Q&A. Another thing, we have the artist's first monograph here, and we have to tell you about this because we also have this special part of it, which is in the book, an essay by Caroline Ellen Liu, our curatorial assistant. This book is a really interesting concept with Christine's work in notation. It's an artistic intervention based on her drawings of musical staffs. And true to Christine and sort of in the theme of this film, many other artist colleagues of Christine's were invited to respond to her notational lines. So this makes it a book of exchange and ideas. And you may purchase it here. Let me see, where am I? My notes. Okay. This screening will be followed by a conversation about Christine's son Kim's work with Chiemi Karasawa, Director of Friends and Strangers, Gan Ueda, partner at Francois Gebali Gallery, Amanda Sroka, Senior Curator here at ICALA, and all of this will be moderated by Emma Nordine, Associate Director of Education Initiatives at Art21. We're going to spare you the reading of bios. We've provided these bio sheets for you to read, but trust us, we have a great panel. And I think that's it. Oh, yes. We have a special message from Christine, thanks to Gan, who was with her recently. And so we're going to play this welcome message by Christine. She couldn't be here. And then it'll be followed by another welcome by Emma, and then the film. Thank you so much for coming.
My name is Emma Nordine. I'm the Associate Director of Education Initiatives at Art21, and I'm so thrilled you all came out tonight. Thanks so much. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Art21, it is a nonprofit that has existed for over 20 years, and it's our mission to educate and expand access to contemporary art through documentary films, resources, and public programs like this one. So thank you. This year, Art21 has produced more films than ever before, and we are so excited to be doing programming in person in Los Angeles again. And I am really, really so over the moon to offer this sneak peek of Christine Sun Kim in this Friends and Strangers Hour of Art in the 21st Century. The film will premiere on Friday, October 20th. So you will have to keep this in your memory for 2 months, but then you can watch it on repeat afterward. I want to thank our hosts here at ICALA, particularly Aska and Tanya, who made this panel possible today. They were really wonderful partners. And with that, if you want to follow us on social media to learn more about Art21's programming and films, it's on all of your favorite platforms at Art21. And with that, enjoy the film.
I've just been noticing that my life is just one big echo. Or rather, maybe just small echoes that become one big echo. And that's something that's been a part of my life since I was born. And it has to deal with repetition, patterns, something that constantly comes up. When I work with interpreters, I experience repetition. Like whatever I sign, Beth repeats. She's echoing me. And sign language is full of echoes. You can use one hand shape and echo that, repeat that, and it just changes the entire sign or the entire word based on where you put it on your body. The shape of the sign for future, which is 2 semicircles away from your face, that's the sign for future. It has a line that you can follow. So I drew that line. And it's an echo in and of itself. And so since it's my ideas, it's my work that's being presented, and a lot of it does have to do with repetition, and a lot of it is full of echoes, I think that is why I want to be as clear as possible.
I'm DJ Kurz of Deaf West Theater. At Deaf West Theater, we bridge deaf and hearing worlds through theater. We're advancing visibility and representation. But I'm jealous of Christine Sun Kim because she does the same thing. But on her own, she can draw a pie chart on paper and have a similar impact. Please welcome artist Christine Sun Kim.
So this tweet here that says, I can 100% promise that you learning sign language is easier than a deaf person learning to hear, is a tweet from a deaf writer. And I think that this framing is it. This is how I want you to think about who I am. This is my deaf identity, and this is where I'm coming from. People love to always ask why I don't read lips. So this is a question I've gotten over and over again. I love the use of infographics. It's this idea shown visually that can be communicated without barriers. It can cross languages, it can cross cultures. So this is the same old hearing people say to me. And as you can see, this is equally distributed because people say a lot of to me.
They look so good. Can you lift yours up more, just a smidgen? Yes. Okay, that's what we want. That one up. She hasn't mentioned yours.
I am very comfortable with collaboration.
I think that looks good.
I usually work with people, whether that's interpreters that I'm working with or people who are speaking on my behalf. I'm used to that. I collaborate with my partner, Tom Motter, a lot, and this has been really nice because I've been able to kind of increase who I collaborate with.
So we've all grown as artists and lecturers and performers, so let's not do that, but it's still very easy to find online.
Motherhood has really impacted my practice. It's impacted the way I envision and the way I approach art. I allow my child to be a part of the process at times. Sometimes we collaborate on a project. Often I work with musical notation. I've really thought about the emptiness of the staff lines. It's not about the notes necessarily, but it's about the foundation that's being laid. And I decided to incorporate our family. I've done one, Tom has done one, and Rue has done one. When I sat down with Rue and I explained the work, she created this drawing, and then she did another one with notes on it. And I asked her what it was. And she said to me, it was a song about family. I've lived in Berlin now for almost 10 years. As an artist, I'm having a great life there because I feel like there's so much less pressure. What I've noticed is that being a parent doesn't have a dent or an impact on my bank account almost at all. Daycare is free. Everything in the city is affordable, especially compared to a place like New York or Los Angeles. And I also have space to create work. So with all of that, I've just found myself recognizing more and more the benefits of a government that supports their citizens, like actually supports their people. People in Germany aren't in debt. But here in the US, I see friends living here who have more than one job just to make ends meet. And I realize that I'm angry about debt. I'm angry that people are living like this because I'm not. I think about my family, my friends, my future, and I'm worried.
I was so happy to hear from you. Of course I had to come. And I think all my friends are coming in next week to see.
A perk of being a member of the deaf community is that you have this shared culture, this shared language. And so people like to stay there. They don't want to be oppressed in the way that they are in the hearing community. But you kind of get trapped. Sometimes you get stuck in that echo. And I was there for a while, but then I became an artist and I had to go into the hearing world. I'm always a little bit jealous of artists who have the privilege to be misunderstood. For me, I automatically feel like I need to explain what things mean. I have to say, no, it's not this, it's that. And I think that stems from a place of how misunderstandings can affect my rights. All these little things in my daily life, as well as navigating access, education, entertainment, family. Growing up, I loved art, but I didn't really take classes because there weren't interpreters available. I remember when I was in high school, there was a sculpture class that I wanted to take that I thought was perfect. I wanted to work with my hands. They said no. Then, as an undergrad majoring in graphic design, they had a night class that I wanted to take. They said no. So it was interesting. At that time, I kept getting told no. And then when I grew up and moved to New York, it was super crowded, and there was hearing people everywhere, which wasn't my experience growing up in California. And so I had to figure out how to constantly communicate with these hearing people. And people were just in my face, and I was in people's faces. Because of that, I just had less fear around it. And what I've realized is that New York gave me the skills to navigate through the world fearlessly. When Hitomi, the curator here at Queens Museum, reached out to me, and we were corresponding back and forth, I thought, how could I come up with an idea without actually physically visiting the Queens Museum?
This is like this.
And in her correspondence, she mentioned that Queens was the epicenter of COVID for a while. And that really struck me and got me thinking. I thought about rest. I'm also seeing people being overworked during the pandemic without maybe having health insurance. Lately, I've been into motion lines. You can find those in comic strips or comic books. And I thought they were a perfect reflection of sign language and how it carries a lot of weight and emotion. For example, the sign for time. I tapped my wrist with my index finger. I looked at a bunch of different signs that come into contact with the body, and I came up with a one-line poem to fit the current climate and what was happening in this area. Time owes me rest again.
Yeah, maybe you can shave a little bit. Yeah, bottom part.
This experience made me think I can work with such a large scale. I thought a lot about that. And it felt right that maybe this is the best way, where we can shove or force our deafness or our existence or our deaf voice, and do that in their everyday lives, in their everyday space. And it happened that the Manchester International Festival reached out to me wanting to work together, saying that I could show any work I wanted. And I was like, all right, let me aim for the biggest thing I can do. I said, let's caption the city. I want people to see captions, to think about why they're there, to think about who might want them. Oh yeah, deaf people. My favorite one is this, because I wanted it all, I wanted more. I was like, let's caption the sky and get a plane. And doing all that work has given me the realization that scale equals visibility. And that has the ability to shape social norms. I want deaf lives to be in your mind and be part of what we consider acceptable, what's normal. If you don't see us, we have no place to be. And I think that's why I've gotten into scale, and also I'm just greedy too.
Art in the 21st Century is available on Amazon Prime Video. This program was made possible by the National Endowment for the Arts, Lambent Foundation, the Anna Maria and Stephen Kellen Foundation, the Andy Warhol Foundation for the Visual Arts, the Horace W. Goldsmith Foundation, Toby Devin Lewis, Robert Lehman Foundation, Nyan McAvoy and Leslie Berriman, and my contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
I hope that was a really wonderful sneak peek of Christine Sun Kim's film. Again, the film will premiere on Friday, October 20th on your local PBS listing. Check it out, watch it live, or then you can watch it on Amazon, but that was a lie for now. You can't find it there. I am really excited for the full hour to come out. You saw a preview of some of the other artists. It's Chanupa Hanska-Loger, Miranda July, and Linda Goodbryant, and the full hour is fantastic, if I may say. Thanks. So to kick off our conversation, I want to ask each of our panelists if you wouldn't mind describing how you met Christine and what was your working relationship. So, Jimmy, I don't know if you want to start.
My name's Chiemi Karasawa. I'm the filmmaker. I met Christine. I was actually called by Art21, and after several conversations, they enlisted me to be the director of this episode, and they told me the artists that they have in mind, and I was particularly thrilled about Christine, not just because she's a charismatic Asian American, and I'm always thrilled to see representation, of course, but I was just so curious about her art practice and how we were going to tell her story, and it just grew from there. Then I was able to meet her for the first time, and she threw her arms around me, and I was in love, and it just kept going. So that's how I met Christine.
My name's Gan Ueda. I'm a partner at Francois Gabali Gallery. We started working with Christine in 2018. That's the year that I first met her. She came into the gallery, whipped out her laptop, and we just started having a conversation, using a tech stack, just back and forth, starting to plan our first show with her. Francois, who owns the gallery, first saw her work in London at a gallery he was showing at there in 2016, and it really stuck in his head. He kept coming back to it over and over again. So when we had the opportunity to make that connection, we really jumped on it. I personally completely fell in love with the work. I found it totally mind-blowing right from the very beginning. Even just as we're sitting on our laptops, typing to each other. I didn't grow up with any connection to the deaf community. I didn't have any deaf friends. And so just wrapping my mind around how this communication works was one thing. But then when we finally came to do our first show, that was a grouping of earlier works. And we had it on view, and people just started showing up. Deaf folks just started showing up. And I realized the significance of her place within the community. That's also when I realized, I really need to start learning sign language, like right now. Yes, because of Christine, yes, because of her work and to understand it, but also because whenever we show her work, people are gonna show up. I had this guy come, and I hope I meet him again to thank him. I walked up to him, he was looking at the show, I whipped out my phone, and I was like, do you know Christine? Have you seen her work before? And his response to me was basically like, sign at me or don't talk to me. And I was like, fair. That's actually so fair. And so that's when I started learning sign. And I think that was, really when CK and my relationship started to grow. We formally kind of added her to our roster and started to represent her. And since then, I've, taken quite a big role in her process and her practice. I kind of help run her studio. I help with a lot of liaising to all different kinds of, to curators, to filmmakers, to different members of the press, to educational bodies. So it's been a really rewarding relationship. Long way of saying that's how I met Christine.
It was great.
I love that you share that too, Gan, because with this episode starting with like the echo, I feel like you're this like wonderful echo
I'm
of
the
Christine
echo.
as an artist. And it's like
I'm one of the echoes.
Yeah, you really are. I'm Amanda, I'm the senior curator here. I first encountered Christine's work at an exhibition at MoMA called Soundings, which is often referenced in relation to her practice. I was in school at the time and just I was really kind of transfixed by the way and curious about the ways in which Christine was engaging with sound in particular. And that was something that I was still really interested in and had wanted to work with her. I didn't have the opportunity to in my former role, but I started here at ICALA in September. And one of the, Christine's was the first artist that I got to invite to do something here, which made a lot of sense for us, not only because of the program that we had when this incredible mural first came up, which I'll share some more about in a little, but also because it was an artist who, in talking through ideas of what makes sense, the mural is such a prominent, it's the first thing people see when they walk in to the building. And what better way to welcome someone and to have a conversation about like accessibility and our entanglements as people than through this project. And it was also really wonderful because our curatorial assistant, who as Oscar mentioned, contributed to the catalog for the Secession show, had like just finished the essay on Christine's work. So when we started, we had a couple other artists, and that was really, she rose to the forefront. And it's been, and again, you were such a big part of that. But I would say this was, my first opportunity to get to work with her via you, which was really special.
Beautiful segue. Amanda, can you start us off? How did the process of working with Christine begin?
Yeah, I mean, I shared, we had what we then called a season of sound at ICALA. So the exhibition program had already been determined for last spring, where we had an exhibition by the artist Milford Graves, so as a musician, and Jacqueline Kiyomi-Gork, an artist who namely works in sound but also in sculpture. And so the question for the mural was, who can we invite to do a project that kind of speaks to this conversation we're having in the galleries around sound. And so we reached out to Christine without a particular project in mind, although at the time Christine had just recently completed a project in Vancouver at the Contemporary Art Gallery there called Debt, Debt, Debt. And there was a show, I think at JTT, was all about debt, right? So that was, we kind of had a sense of interests that she was working on, but it was really like, are you interested in doing this? And then what can you imagine? And then from there came this project, which is called Bounce Back. And it was really, it was a very seamless because I truly think because your role, Gan, and also being able to kind of show examples of past murals, but also think about, because, and as Christine talks about in that video and elsewhere, thinking at that scale, like that's the largest scale of a single wall that an artist gets to play with here. So it felt like a really wonderful invitation. But yeah, I think that's kind of where it started, and there were some ideas about its location, but I think for the most part, it was pretty seamless.
You got a sense of how she uses percentages when she's doing murals. We put up these murals in different places around the world. And Christine now kind of has this system of percentages that she uses to communicate with the mural painters of like, it needs to be a little drier. It needs to be 25% less wet. And it's kind of funny thinking about what 25% less wet means. But
There were a lot of pictures back and forth, like, is this okay? Or like more brushwork, more. And I think that's also really wonderful to think of, like how to translate a drawing from a hand drawing to an iPad to then, inviting other, what I think is so beautiful is the work itself is it like immediately in seeing these three hands, your question, is that a single hand? Is that multiple hands? You see like the entanglement of each other through our bodies, but also through debt. And in even the installation itself, you're inviting these. We had two muralists kind of work with us on this, and so every day it was like, okay, is this at the right percentage? And I should say too, it felt beyond just being a big fan of Christine, but also knowing that Christine, is from Los Angeles or from Southern California, and it felt really important as an institution. Christine has murals all over the world, but to do something here in a place that at one point she called home felt really special too.
Thank you. I'm curious, what do you hope visitors gain from seeing Kim's work? Or in particular, Bounce Back, this one.
Yeah. I think that it being, like I said, the first, within the context of the previous season of exhibitions, it was really powerful to see this work that very much thinks about sound as a language. And we had two other artists who were thinking about, sound in other iterations and other forms. But I would say what's really beautiful is like with this work, even thinking of it in the context of the three exhibitions that we have on view right now, which are very much trying to tell a story about our interconnectedness. These are three artists, one from Vietnam, one from Scotland, another from LA, and how can these seemingly disparate geographies, come together through the language of art? And I think with Bounce Back, it is about that interconnectedness, for better or for worse, and the ways in which debt in particular kind of get a conversation around that can speak to like our social, cultural, and political contracts around that as, as participants in this culture, particularly in the US too. So I think that like sense of entanglement and relationality and connection or lack thereof as people is what Christine's work has always been to me. And so I hope that our visitors can, leave with that or come in with that.
Very well said. I love the idea of interrogating connection, I think is so important. Gian, I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about your working relationship with Christine Sun Kim and how that has changed your perspective on art or working with artists.
Yeah, absolutely. Since we started working together, she's really become one of the core artists of our program. Our working relationship has become a friendship, yes. I in some ways, I describe it as almost like an agent. So I'm doing just a lot of opportunities come in, and we just kind of sort through and work together on what makes the most sense for what she wants to do. But I think for me, the really fulfilling part is having gained a deep understanding of the breadth of her practice going backwards in time. And so when she's making new work, I can be a sounding board of, oh, this really reminds me of these two other things that you did 7 and 10 years ago, and how, these create these chains through time. So, for example, the work that's out here, Bounce Back, it's 3 hands, and they have these comic book lines indicating the sign for death. And it's moving between the 3. And, it really makes me think of how this is actually not the first time that she's incorporating lines to represent debt, to represent signs. She had a whole series back in 2018, about the sign for obsession, which she called mind touch. And so using these lines to like represent signs, I think it's really fascinating. sign is not something that you can write down. There are technical, linguistic notation systems, but not something that we use with each other. And so the way that she's using comic book lines or kind of creating her own notation is really fascinating, has taken a new turn with some of her new work, but is something that goes backwards in time and in different ways. And seeing how she crafts that over her practice is really interesting. So being that sounding board and being that, being the first person to kind of think through what's coming out of the studio and create language around it, to create some context around it, and to work with her in that sense. About how it's changed my perspective on artists, Christine, she said something in the video about wanting to control how her work is talked about, that it's not this, it's this. And she, I think she's really shown me the lengths that you can go with that artists should be able to control how their work is understood. And she's coming from a position of, facing ableism, like really at its core. One of the things that I do is I vet a lot of text that's written about her work. And you see some of these tropes that come up over and over again. And they can be really upsetting, honestly. And so one of the things that we've done is we've created an access writer that we share with everyone that wants to do a project with her, anyone that wants to write about her work. And it basically is an intro to deaf culture. It's basically an intro to language, hearing impaired. Why do we not want to use hearing impaired? Why do we want deaf? Why do we stand behind the strong identity of deafness, of disability, that it's not differently abled, it's disabled? And so kind of sharing some of these things with people is a really powerful experience for me, because it shows what you're able to do in that space. So yeah, I mean, Christine blows my mind in many ways, like all the time. Also just like how fabulously dressed she is, like her sense of style. She gives me modeling advice, which I'll share with you. One modeling advice that she gave to me is right before you take a picture, smile really big and then let it go.
Perfection.
I just have to interject here and say that it was really difficult to make a video that's only 13 minutes long about her, because there's so much rich territory to cover, and she's one of the funniest people I've ever met. One of the most challenging parts was we had interwoven quite a bit of Gan's interview, which we did at the gallery here in LA, which I'm sorry, Gan, that we had to cut it. But for time, it was one of the things that they decided they would rather lose somebody talking about her than let her talk about herself. But Gan, you got to tell them about what her impression of you was. It's hilarious.
Wait, which
she
time?
She said.
Oh, about my vibe?
Yes, about your vibe.
During the pandemic, there was so many Zooms, right? And then I would start meeting people at art fairs or at exhibitions or at openings or whatever that I had Zoomed with a lot. And people would always be like, wow, you're so tall. I'm 6'3". And I was telling this to Christine and she's like, yeah, but Gan, you kind of have a short vibe. I was like, geez, CK, thanks a lot.
But just, I think, having to eliminate the part in the documentary where Gan talks about learning sign so he can better represent her, so he can better engage with her audience. All of that to me is just so powerful, and I just, kills me that we had to lose it, because I think it's so important.
When we were making it, I also wanted to, and we had this conversation of like, there are so many times where I'm at an opening with Christine and people, I'm with some of the most beautiful signers in the world, and people want to come up and talk to me about my signing. And I'm like, look, I hope you understand, I am terrible at signing. Like, I'm very much a learner and very much still in the process. And it gets really awkward. And so, when that was in there, I did feel a little bit, complicated about it. But at the same time, I understood that it's I'm not the only person that has learned to sign because of Christine's son, Kim. And
But when you think about how many gallerists actually take the time to learn a foreign language to better represent their artist, I just think that that's such an incredible, thing to do. And for her, it's almost essential because there are so many people interested in her art. And you saw at the gallery opening, all of her, enthusiasts. She has a huge deaf following. And if you don't communicate, if you can't communicate via ASL or sign, you're missing out. You know what I mean?
And I think just having access to the linguistic layers
Yes.
of what she's doing and really being able to see how she's moving between languages, how things are not just in English and they're not just in ASL, and that she's using these gray spaces in between languages that I would not have access to, I don't think, in the same way. And so it's great because I'm able to kind of take some of that and help others understand it. And I think when gallerists are really effective, they're also being educators.
I was just going to say what was really powerful during the open house for this show in February was like to also just understanding the complexity of those layers was also like working with Pro Bono ASL, which was amazing. But there were folks who were like signing in multiple languages and like being able to translate like to ASL to Spanish to then go back. Like to me, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so powerful. And to think about how a single artist practice has now like made us a hub for free intro to ASL classes. And I think that's only because of the insistence, to your point, Gan, of like, of how the work is framed and how it should be talked about and how it should be understood. And so it's like to see the actual echoes of that too in the culture even of this institution has been really powerful.
You also led to something in our process since then of we're always asking about ASL at museums. I mean, we're always asking of when we're organizing a loan or whatever it is and what is, are you offering ASL tours? Like, what kind of accessibility are you offering? And a lot of museums that are adding these things around Christine's shows then retain them, and it stays on at the museum. And so that's another really concrete impact that she has.
Gan, question, is her rider public? Because I think that's such a fantastic document.
Well, no, it's not.
Is her rider public?
No, it's not. But there is something that she has called deafpower.me. And that's a website that she made with a colleague, Ravi. And it is a kind of condensed resource page of deaf culture, ASL, deaf artists and art. And so that's a public website, deafpower.me.
Great, thank you for sharing. I will also just interject that a hallmark of Art21 films is having the artist speak in their own voice about their work. We try to avoid voiceover or curators whenever possible, not always possible. So Gan, I did also love your threading through one of the first drafts of the film, but I am happy it's mainly Christine.
Me too.
Which is a great segue. Shemi, could you tell us a little bit how you got involved with Art21?
They found me somehow. I'm not sure how that happened, and I'm so grateful because it was a thrill to meet these artists. And I was solicited by them, and then I think they checked all my references and called a bunch of studios to see if I was a good collaborator, and I guess I passed.
You definitely passed.
But yeah, like I said, it was a thrill to not only make a portrait about Christine, but just learn so much during the process. And she is differently abled. I had a cousin growing up that was deaf, and I remember our families did not know how to communicate with him, and we felt sorry for him. And looking back, I just see how screwed up that was because he was abled. It's just that we weren't given an interface to communicate with him. And so he was living in this other world and we were living in ours. And having had this relationship with Christine now that is so seamless, and it has to do with having access to translators. But the next step is really, for me, one of the most profound things is why isn't ASL taught in schools? Why isn't it considered another language? Why isn't the choice to learn ASL part of everyday education? And there's other reasons besides communicating with deaf people. It would just be so convenient to be at a loud concert and talk to your neighbor in ASL. I mean, there's so many applications where it would be amazingly useful. But one of the things that I love is that learning about Christine, her personality, is seamless. Like when I think about her, I don't think about her as differently abled because she communicates so well and so articulately with so much charisma. And I even feel stupid saying that because why wouldn't she? But I just don't think of her as differently abled, even though I know, that that's a terminology. She's incredible, and I'm grateful that I was able to learn through making this portrait.
Well, I know we are in Los Angeles, one of the film capitals of the world. I have a film question. I'll wait for her. When you first met Christine, did she make specific requests? Were there things she wanted to include?
Yeah. She has a lot of requests. And one of them was to not depict her making art. And I thought it was a joke. I mean, I was like, wait a minute, have you seen Art21?
It's Art21.
It's all this, people sculpting, people painting. And so we had a Zoom, and there was an interpreter, and we were Zooming, and she said that, and I said, wait, can you repeat that? And the interpreter repeated that, and I said, you mean never? You're never gonna set pen to paper, or you're not gonna do any? And she's like, no, it's not authentic. I would never be doing it with a camera rolling on me. So then, of course, I did the next thing is I emailed Gan. And then I got him on the phone and I said, is she serious? Are we never gonna see her making art? And he was like, if that's what she wants, if that's what she says, and then yeah. And then I thought, wait, I'm not sure I can do this. What are we gonna film her doing? And so, as you see, we did a whole bunch of other stuff. But it was challenging because I thought, how are we gonna tell her story? Half of Art21's is somebody, painting and talking and thinking and painting and talking and thinking. But I think it really encouraged us to tell a broader story about her. And one of the things she agreed to do was make selfie videos of herself in her Berlin studio. And I thought, oh, good, since we're not there, she's gonna make selfies of herself drawing and painting. And then I got the selfies back and it was her organizing her charcoals and it was her putting her work on the walls and taking it down. But it still was an authentic artist's practice that she was showing us. And plus they were really well framed and composed and very artistic. And at the end of our cut, when I showed the first rough cut to Nick, the producer, I said, so did you notice? And I said, notice what? And he said, notice what? And I said, did you notice that she's never making art? And he goes, no. And I was like, great, we did it, But he swears that she was making art in this film.
I want to commend you because that is a real true director because I also agree. I don't pick up on that. So great job. Sorry again.
No, I was going to say, I think she is making art. That's one thing that I think it's like, okay, she is such a brilliant artist because the decision not to show her committing charcoal to paper shifts the focus to a huge part of her practice, which is how she inhabits public space. And that happens with murals, it happens with performances, it happens with public talks, it happens, I kind of flippantly talked about how she dresses, which, superficial, whatever, but it's actually not. She does it very strategically, very intentionally, and it's part of power, it's part of media power, and it's part of inhabiting public space as a powerful deaf Asian woman. And so
just check out her Instagram. It's like a fashion show. It's amazing.
And it's very thought through. It's very purposeful.
My God.
And so I love the decision. Now looking back, at the time that you called me, I was like, well, if she doesn't want to, I guess, whatever. But now looking back, I see what a great thought that was on her part.
Well, also the fact that she does, because she works in mural spaces, she's sending, on her iPad, she's sketching and then sending the sketch to a curator of a museum who's then hiring a muralist who's going up and down. And I can't, just talking about how precise she wants the mural to be translated from this drawing, I got to the Queen's Museum and I thought, damn, 3/4 of the mural has already been painted. And so we were there for 2 days, and I tell you, like, each word came and went like 5 times because it wasn't perfectly drawn. You know, like the letters kept disappearing and coming back, and she would be on FaceTime with Hitomi, and Hitomi would be screaming at the muralist, no, more like this, more like that, you know. So we did capture quite a bit of mural drawing, which is, I guess, a surrogate for her drawing.
At least you didn't get what Art Basel got when they sent a photographer, which is her sitting at a scanner scanning things. That was all I got.
I'm honored for Art21 as an organization that we got more than a scanner. So thank you for that. We've learned a little bit that GAN didn't make the final cut. Sorry. Were there other things that didn't make the final cut that you were sad to lose?
Oh my God. How long do we have? I mean,
Not that long, but maybe a good
I
story.
think this was, I have an hour to tell 4 artist stories, and she was one of them. And, you know, everybody loves her charisma. Like, we just liked sitting there watching her sign. We just thought it was amazing. And then you start noticing how everybody else signs, and you see so much of somebody's personality come across. I'm trying to think, what else? I mean, there was such lovely stuff of Rue, her daughter, and Tom's work, the collaborative stuff that they do together. I would have liked to include more of that because that's pretty captivating. And I know that in the very beginning, Christine was opposed to showing her translators on camera. And so every time I thought that I had talked her into it, she would change her mind on the spot. We would bring cameras to a location. Both translators would be there ready to talk. And then she's like, no, I don't think I want to do this. And then once the thing had been edited together, she emailed me and she said, you know, I'm really upset that we didn't include any of my interpreters in the dialogue. And I said, don't you remember the 3 times you told me that you didn't want them in? And she goes, oh, you're right, my bad. So, and ultimately she did want a translator to be, so I think that's another thing that I thought would have been really interesting. And then more of Rue, of course, but just to see a who's then 4-year-old ASL communicating to her mother, speaking in English and German
Mostly
to
German.
Tom.
Mostly German to Tom.
And then doesn't she do German Sign Language also? So she speaks German Sign Language, which is different than American Sign Language. She speaks American Sign Language. She speaks English, and she speaks German, and she's 4. I mean, that I could have made a whole documentary
Really the
just on
dream.
that.
I wish I can aspire to that as a grown-up.
But you got to see her make a piece of art and then for it to fly on a flag at a museum, and I think that's an accomplishment as well. So,
I'm curious, Gan, is there a difference in working with Christine between working at a museum or for a mural project and working with Christine as a documentary subject?
No. I mean, Christine's Christine. She is so powerfully herself. And she doesn't change who she is in different contexts. It's one thing that I love about her.
The other thing I'll say about her as a communicator is it doesn't matter what time of day or night I'll send her an email. I'll get a response within 20 minutes. And she'll be in Berlin. And I'll be, just like, oh, I'll send this and I'll think that I'll get an email within 48 hours or something. And like 20 minutes later, she's responded. And I'd say something like, oh, let me know if you have any family pictures of yourself or your family. And 20 minutes later is like, I have these 3. Do you want any more? It's like, how is she on media all the time? Like, it's amazing.
Also, working with an artist, that's the dream. A very fast response. That's really beautiful.
It's an ideal situation.
Yeah.
I can say that's not always the case, as you know, too.
Correct.
So
It's not. Love everyone. I am curious if our panelists have any questions for each other.
Chiemi, so you talked a little bit about including the interpreters. Like formally for you making the film, what was that like for you? Because Christine has multiple interpreters.
That's right.
With different voices.
That's right.
Like audible voices.
Right.
How did you navigate that?
So that's a very interesting question. And it was something that we thought about because every time we'd show up on location with her, somebody different would be interpreting for her. So we would, like you saw at the Somerset House, there was a woman that you see on camera who's voicing for Christine. which was great because you can see her on camera. But a lot of the time, like per se in the performance at Red Cat, there's an off-camera interpreter that you hear. And that happens to be the interpreter that was the first person that we recorded in our interview. That was the woman that came with her, Beth. And we decided that no matter what we recorded, when there was an off-camera interpreter, when we had an edit of the rough cut of the film, we were gonna have Beth come in and revoice whoever was voicing her that was another interpreter. So there'd be one interpreter's voice throughout the entire film when you couldn't see them. And then when an interpreter was on camera, of course, it wouldn't matter if they were speaking directly. So, and how did you feel about that? Do you think it worked?
Yeah.
Did it work?
I thought it was very
understand?
smooth.
Okay. I'm very curious if the audience has questions about her practice for any of us.
Yeah, we can go to the audience. Does anyone have a question?
Not a single question.
Can also think for a moment. Maybe didn't know questions were coming so soon. Any other questions?
I think one comment to make maybe too is like thinking about this, the other artists who are featured in Friends and Strangers, and thinking about the fact that we don't see Christine make work in a traditional way, right? And to your point, Gan, of like if we're seeing the artwork, we're seeing the social contract actually unfolding, which is often not what you get to see when you know, or like you don't have awareness, which I think is really interesting. And one of, I obviously haven't seen the full thing, but thinking of the
You
pairing.
will soon.
Soon, October. Thinking of the pairing with Linda Good-Bryant, who like in both cases though, like with Christine and Linda, it's about like creating space or creating visibility and creating, that like social contract is the work too. And so not having to fit into, which is why it's great that it's an Art21 to kind of highlight the ways in which social relations are also part of the work. That's the making too.
Well, I think also as a woman filmmaker, I was very interested to show her family and how somebody does live a life as an artist who has a family, a child, expenses, things to navigate in life. Because there's a lot of Art21s where it's just solo artists and they're this like monolith of a thing and you're in awe of them and yet you don't know, how they do what they do and how that contributes to how easy or difficult or challenging it is. And so I liked that we were able to see, glimpses of Christine's life outside of just being an artist.
Thank you. A great sell for Friends and Strangers in October. We have a question in the front.
Yes, hello, everybody. My name is Albert, and I really wanted to, I came to advocate for CK and her work, and hopefully to meet her if she was going to be here, but for the deaf community, their access to contemporary art is not at the same level as someone else navigating the world. I do feel that it's behind, and that's connected especially with high concept art. I really feel that it's lacking. So I wanted to ask CK in person if she'd be willing to animate her artwork, and maybe that would bring it closer to a visual medium and movement connecting her art with the deaf community. Right now, conceptually, it might connect with those who are deep in the art world, but some others have lots of questions and curiosity. So I was just wondering if that may be something that she intended to do in the future.
We'll see. She did make an animation that was related to the Queens Museum mural, Time Owes Me Rest Again, that Shami included in the video. That kind of animation is still quite abstract, to your point. It's still pretty conceptual. It's not that if you know ASL and you watch that, you're gonna know what's going on. You still do need it unpacked a bit. I think that's gonna be a hallmark of her work going forward. I don't think that she's interested in changing that kind of visual language. But yeah, it's a really good point and a really good question. How accessible can conceptualism be?
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think too that in thinking about conceptual, like the importance of kind of conceptual kind of poetics in her like visual vocabulary that she's doing, and also this bend towards kind of like pedagogy or educational programming. Like, I'm curious if there's other instances where she's done activations or like things that are beyond like engaging a public in a larger way, or different activations, or if that's something that she's thinking about doing, or asking collaborating institutions to do, or things that of that way that get a little bit beyond just like we're an institution here to teach, but more of like let's sit with a conceptual like rigor of her work.
Yeah, performance is a part of her work now, and it has been for a long time. Maybe it was even a more prominent kind of mode for her maybe 10 years ago, where she would do public performances. For example, in maybe 2010, 2012, she did a project in Tokyo with a whole auditorium full of people and basically played them like an instrument with different instructions and different cards, using microphones and different things. So in terms of like an embodied like relationship with an audience, like this is part of her work and it will continue to be. You know, part of what you're saying also makes me think of a performance that she has done multiple times in the past, and that we're in plans right now to retool it, reperform it, and turn it into an installation. It's called Five Finger Discount History. And it is using the five fingers of the hand as a structuring kind of as a structure to talk about deaf history and to go through the development of ASL, to go through the place of deaf people in the US. So there are different modes, I think. I mean, the other thing that comes to mind is her day job before she quit to become a full-time artist was creating the ASL tour program at the Whitney, which continues to this day. And actually you can go on YouTube and you can find videos of her giving ASL tours of like a Richard Archfager show or whatever. So
Can
in
you
different
pause,
ways, yes.
Can you pause for our
Yes.
interpreters to switch?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was kind of finished anyway. That's all.
Yeah, thank you.
But I think too, one of the examples that comes up in the film is also like the Manchester project is very much about, there is a kind of this like encountering the work in multiple spaces, multiple places of like, you're very aware of like, of your own embodied experience of that. So it's less of like Christina's artist and performing that, but actually inviting you to kind of understand the ways in which like these, whether it's captions or other forms are like performing onto you, or like, you know, affecting or not, or like you can choose to, the things that we can choose to either like turn on or turn off on a computer or a TV or something, but like then instead making that like very visible. So I feel like that too, like again, maybe just like unpacking like this notion of performance without Christine having to be the performer. I think like the work itself is also like inviting you into that.
Yeah, totally. I guess I asked that question, but that was really helpful. I guess I asked that question because it makes me think a little bit, programming around certain types of work, like there's like a thing of tokenism that like already comes into play, I think, or the ways in which, yeah, or just like the ways in which like otherness is like tokenized for like institutional, you know, visibility. And I think ways in which, I'm curious in ways in which institutions, you know, big and small, push and pull with that. So it sounds like, I mean, she sounds amazing and rad, so it sounds like she's doing it.
It's an important point, the tokenism point.
Any other? Yeah. Tanya's coming around. She's doing great.
Thanks. I was really curious. Maybe the second time I came across Christine Sun Kim was when she signed the Star Spangled Banner for the Super Bowl. I forget what year that was.
2020.
And I'm really curious if she thinks of that as an extension of her performance practice, or was that just like a paid gig?
Such an interesting question, and one with an evolving answer over time. When she did it, it was obviously a very complicated decision. She sees herself as an artist that's engaged in a kind of protest, and to participate with the NFL is complicated. But she decided the platform was too large to refuse for what she wanted to do. I don't know if you saw the op-ed that she published in the New York Times the next day, but it reflected on what it was like to do that performance and not only, not show up on TV at all, but they flashed a picture and that was basically it. On the ASL dedicated stream online, created by CBS to access the ASL performances, those cameras panned away from her and wandered across the sidelines and just looked at the players or whatever during her performance. And so immediately afterwards, her feeling was, no, that was not a performance. I was invited by the National Association for the Deaf. This is something that they do every year. There's a different performer that's invited to do this. I was translating an existing song. She doesn't even like ASL music translations. She's made art about that as well. Over time, it's become an artwork. Over time, it's also become something that has produced other artwork. She has an exhibition up right now at the Art Institute in Chicago with a really interesting video about this. It is Beth, who we saw in the video, and you can just see Beth kind of from her waist up, and she's cueing Christine. So this is a system, not ASL, but just a system that they decided between themselves when Christine was signing to keep her in line with the singers who are performing and to kind of hold, show when the notes are being held to, keep her kind of in sync. And so all you see in this installation is a video of Beth doing her signaling system, kind of light indications of where we are in the song. And then teleprompter-like scrolling text is Christine's translation of the Star Spangled Banner into ASL gloss, so using English words, but not as English as stand-ins for signs, with some sound subtitles as well. So these are kind of flowing over. So over time, it's become this thing, partially because of this absence in the record. She received an award and they wanted to show that video. They really wanted to show the video of her performing. And I was banging on the door of CBS and the NFL trying to get this video of her performing. There is no video. The most televised event in America, there's no video of Christine performing. And it's so enraging. I'm still so mad about it. She's probably the least mad of everyone around her. We're all just fuming. She's like, yeah, whatever. Of course the NFL fucked up. So when you see Beth, when you see this piece that's reflecting on this event, and you don't see Christine, that's purposeful.
We did actually have somebody shot an iPhone video of her doing this.
There's iPhone videos.
Yeah. And we tried to include it in the film, in this film, but then we had to lose it for time because it broke away from.
Also, it's an iPhone video. Come
I
on,
know.
let's get a professional.
I know, but she just looks amazing and she is so beautiful. Yeah. 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 It's quite something. It's quite something.
That's everyone's homework. You're going to look up that Star Spangled Banner tonight, what we can find. I think we have time for one more question, maybe in the back.
Yeah, hey, I was curious about the reception of her work within the deaf community and if there's been any criticism of it or if it's universal support.
I would love to hear some criticism of her work from deaf viewers. I haven't yet, but I would be really interested in what that kind of critique looks like. So anyone of my friends here who want to chat afterwards, you want to critique CK, let me know. No, I mean, I think she's she's a really prominent figure, and she, I think people really respect what she's done.
Thank you. With that, thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you to ICA LA. This was so fun to be with you all tonight. We have a little bit of time still, right? So people can eat snacks if they haven't.
I also just wanted to shout out my cameraman is here, Dowd Sani, he's in the back. Thanks for filming such a beautiful film, Dowd.
Yeah. With that, let's mingle.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.